We had the motivating cereal study earlier in this chapter where we're looking at the children and asking them to do the taste test and finding out which box of cereal they preferred and seeing if the cartoons made a difference. So we had found that 52 out of the 80 children chose the box with cartoons, and we want to know what is the p-value for this scenario from StatKey. So just to recall, what we were testing for was if the proportion of kids picking the box with cartoons was 50%, in other words, no preference for the cartoons, or if it was greater than 50% or p is greater than 0.5, suggesting there was a preference for the cartoons. And our sample value then was this 52 out of 80, which was 0.65. So we'd visited that stuff earlier. So to get the p-value from StatKey, we will go to a randomization hypothesis test section. We're doing a single proportion. We can edit our data. It'll ask for the count, which was 52, and the sample size, which was 80. And we can see then over on the side, our original sample is set with a proportion of 0.65. Here you can change the null and what you're testing for. We actually don't have to. It's already was set at 0.5, but I want to note that in case you ever do need to change that. So our null value is 0.5, and then I'll generate 1,000 samples. So these are the p-hats that are likely if the null is true, and we have a proportion of 0.5, and the kids don't really care and are picking 50-50. We're doing a right tail test, so we click right tail. We put our sample value in of 0.65, and we can already see that our sample value is pretty far out there in the tail. So what we're getting is a p-value of 0.006. So not very likely to get a sample value of 65% or 52 out of 80 if the kids are picking 50-50, have no preference for that box. Okay, so our p-value was 0.006. And we'll more formally look at how we state these conclusions to these tests later. It really hasn't occurred yet, but I just want to give you a sense of sort of what this is going to tell us. The p-value being small is telling us that this p-hat of 0.65 is not likely if the null is true and we have a 0.5. Okay, but we did get a p-hat of 0.65, and so that's going to tell us the null is probably not true because we're not going to get that value if the null is true. So this is saying that we want to get rid of the null, and we have evidence against the null. And then that means also in favor of the alternative. And the alternative is telling us that there is a preference for the cartoon box. So we're seeing here that we have evidence of a preference for the cartoon box in the population. So we're trying to extend what we saw in our sample, this value, and what it would tell us about the population of children, the big group. And we're saying that based off that sample value, we do have evidence that if we looked at the entire population, we would expect over 50% to be picking the box with the cartoons.